misplaced. I tried to reason with myself. My husband and the elders had taught me that the fault was not in Mormonism, but in my early Gentile training, and I believed them, and thought that all the inconsistencies which I had heard of or seen in Brigham Young and the other prominent men should be attributed to the weakness of human nature, and not to the system. Still, doubts would suggest themselves, only, however, to be immediately suppressed, for it was by slow degrees that the truth dawned upon my mind. It was only natural that I should hesitate. I was a wife and a mother, and I could not consult my own wishes or desires. It was my duty, I knew, to do what was right, at whatever cost to my own feelings, and I dared not think of open rebellion. Had I then rebelled, I must have renounced all that in life I held dearest, husband, children, all. I knew my husband's devotion to the faith, and that he would not hesitate to make any sacrifice for it. He would even glory in giving up what most men hold dearest for the sake of the church, and we had both been taught that whosoever forsook husband or wife for the sake of the church, it should be accounted to them for righteousness. I saw around me daily and hourly the effects of this teaching upon the unfortunate wives and children, but I nevertheless strove, how painfully none but myself could tell, to banish from my mind every doubt, and to esteem the natural questioning of my heart a sin. "Are you not satisfied that it is right for me to take another wife?" my husband asked. "I have never yet really doubted that the revelation was from God," I replied, "for I cannot believe that any man would be so blasphemous and wicked as to set forth such a revelation in God's name, unless he received it as he said he did. If it is from God, of course, you are right to obey it. But if I were to consult my own feelings, I would never consent to live in polygamy. I would rather risk salvation and tell the Lord that He had placed upon me a burden heavier than I was able to bear, and that I regarded Him as a hard taskmaster. But when the salvation of my husband and children, to say nothing of my own, is at stake, my wishes and happiness go for nothing, and I can only consent." From that moment I felt like a condemned criminal for whom there was not a shadow of hope or a chance of escape. Could I possibly have looked upon the sacred obligations of marriage as lightly as Mormonism taught me to regard them? I believe I should have broken every tie and risked the consequences. But I had vowed to be faithful unto death, and if this second marriage was for my husband's welfare and for the salvation of us and our children, I resolved to make the effort to subdue my rebellious heart, or die in the attempt. For the first time in my life I thanked God that I was not a man, and that the salvation of my family did not depend upon me, for if 50 revelations had commanded it, I could not have taken the responsibility of withering one loving, trusting heart. I felt that if such laws were given to us, our woman's nature ought to have been adapted to them, so that submission to them might be as much a pleasure to us as it was to the men, and that we might at least feel that we were justly dealt with. Not long after this, my husband brought me a message from Eliza R. Snow. She wanted me to take tea with her, and he urged me to accept the invitation. I did not want to go, for I knew too well her object in sending for me. She had been talking with my husband about me, I felt sure, and that was how she came to send the message by him. I went, however, and as I anticipated, she wanted to talk with me about polygamy, and to try to convince me that it was for our best interests that my husband should take another wife, and that it was quite time he did so. I told her that he was not yet in a position to do so. We have quite a family, I said, and I think he should at least be allowed to wait until he has accumulated a little before he embarrasses himself with new responsibilities. And where would the kingdom of God be, she asked, if we all talked this way? Let your husband take more wives, and let them help him, and you will feel blessed in keeping the commands of God. There would be no good in my husband taking another wife, I said, while I feel as I do now. To be acceptable to the Lord, a sacrifice should be made willingly and in a proper spirit, and I do not think that under present circumstances it is proper for him to do this thing. Let him be the judge of that, she replied. Do not seek to control him. He alone is responsible, and therefore let him do as he thinks best. But, I said, he himself does not want another wife yet. But I spoke with hesitation, for my heart misgave me. You are mistaken, she answered. Your husband is a very good man and desires to live his religion, and it is a great grief to him to know that you feel as you do, and you really must try to overcome your opposition. If you had a loaf of bread to make, and you made it, and it was pronounced good, do you think it would be of the slightest consequence what feelings agitated your mind while you were making it, so long as it was well made? So it is with the Lord. He does not care with what feelings you give your husband another wife, so long as you do so. This was a miserable attempt at reasoning, to say nothing of its falsity. And notwithstanding all she said, I still felt that no blessing would even attend an unwilling sacrifice, and I told her so. She spoke to me very kindly, however, and tried to encourage me, and suggested that Carrie would be a very proper person for my husband to marry. I had now no longer any doubt in my mind that it had all been arranged, and that opposition on my part would be all in vain. I was indignant at this, for I believed that, as the revelation itself said, I, the first wife, ought first to have been consulted. This, however, I subsequently found was as false as the system itself. I believed that I was the victim of a conspiracy, and I did not intend to submit without giving them some trouble. I returned home, pondering over what had been said to me, with a feeling of intense weariness oppressing my heart. I did not know what to think. It appeared to me that everyone had determined that Carrie should be my husband's second wife, and I now believed, with my talkative friend, that Brigham Young had certainly intended it from the beginning. I felt that I would rather that he should marry almost anyone else than her, for I felt certain that I should hate any woman whom he might marry, no matter how much I might have loved her before. But my heart was soon relieved of its trouble respecting poor Carrie, for, as I before mentioned, her failing health forbade all thoughts of marriage, and my husband, after a short time, never spoke to me about her. The real cause of my distress, however, was by no means removed. It was determined, without appeal, that my husband should, notwithstanding any impediment to the contrary, take another wife, whoever that chosen one might be. My apprehensions, therefore, were not removed. They were only turned in another direction.